king. Happy, many down, many Jack King from right. Just new king big. Great can new happy. The owls are not what they seem. The owls. People very just king, great king. People error, people king, big just king. Happy, many down, many Jack King from right. Just new king big. Great can new happy. The owls are not what they seem. The owls are not what they seem. The owls, people very just king, great king. People error, people king, big just king. King, happy, many down, many Jack King from right. Just new king big. Great can new happy. The owls are not what they seem. The owls.
All right, that one's a little self-indulgent.
Ooh, yeah. Can you feel it? That sweet, sweet revelation. The truth is served, take a sip. Ooh, it's a holy sensation. Sip the Kool-Aid, baby. Pass the cup, don't say maybe. Once you're in, you're never out. Say amen, scream and shout. Sip the Kool-Aid, baby. Pass the cup, don't say maybe. That's a maybe. Once you're in, you're never out. Say amen, scream and shout. Now don't you question, just obey. Groove with us and fade away.
Can New Happy, though. Great Can New Happy, and I can rejoice about that.
Rejoice, although this world will devastate you. And rejoice, although this world will penetrate you. And rejoice, although you will not survive. Rejoice, you'll never make it out alive.
Excellent rehearsal, gentlemen.
And rejoice, Your hair, it smells like burning hair. Oh, rejoice, your nails all got chewed off. Oh, rejoice, and holy fuck, you're bleeding there. Oh, rejoice, you burn your whole beard off. Rejoice, despite the fact this world will hurt you. And rejoice despite the fact this world will kill you. And rejoice despite the fact this world will tear you to shreds. Rejoice because you're trying your best.
Hey, I love that one, dude. That's gorgeous. Thank you, brother.
This song is called Asynchronous Ontology for Dummies. Circles.
But I'm trying
Round it up.
to
Go.
learn the song.
There is no try. There's only do.
Well, I don't know about the meaning crisis. Left, right, black, white, or other vices. Which Jesus Christ is right, or if we're all saved. From my perspective, a proposition. Participate procedurally, running in circles, remembering body. We're in the age of decay. Symbolically speaking, the reapers are reaping them damn agriculture. Oh boy, holy cannoli. All right, we're getting there.
You wrote the song, sir. Please, sir.
I wonder if, from my perspective, the proposition, participate procedurally, running in circles, remembering body. We're in the age of decay. Symbolically speaking, the reapers are reaping. Oh, shish kebab.
Shish kebab.
You know, tips of my fingers. They go. Not this one. Kind of go.
Here we go.
I don't know about the meaning crisis. Left, right, black, white, or other vices. Which Jesus Christ is right, or if we're all saved. From my perspective, proposition, procedurally running, participate procedurally, running in circles, remember everybody, we're in the age of decay. Symbolically speaking, the reapers are reaping, and agricultors are whispering sweetly, we're all in pursuit and need heavy of the beat. Red pill, blue pill, red pill, Muslim, DMT, red pill, got one and number two, we're all the same damn thing. So clean your room, repent on sin, ontology for dummies, the bird's eye view. If you really knew, could you really say? Red pill, oh. Yeah. All right. I think I should be done with that because my fingers are
All my
being
fingers and
bitches.
toes.
Straight up bitches.
All right, all your fingers and toes. I hope all your fingers and toes are here. This is the Friday morning Estuary live stream, and still waiting for the birthday boy to get here. Maybe he's, having a celebratory breakfast here on the West Coast. Our own Nate Hile. Jess seems to be having some internet troubles, but I will start bringing the people in. If you're ready to be brought in, Tyle, make sure your camera's on, and I will bring you in. I'm going to bring the old guard in first, and then the newbies in. Well, we'll see who all makes it. Well, there he is, and there's you're hard to find a better corner OG than the man himself from the UK, Mr. Tayo. How are you this morning?
When you said corner OG, I thought you were bringing Jess up. He's got seniority over me.
Yeah, he was pretty early. But he popped off again, and I don't know, so just to let people know how I assemble this crew, I do have an email of some corner OGs that I send out when I post a list that people can sign up for this on. And then I also put a list out. I also put a link out to the member section. So some of you who have either your $3 a month, thanks to Ups or Rick Walker, and some of you who pay your $3 a month, you're, well, what am I getting for my $3 a month? Well, you're getting the chance to be in this live stream. It's one of the things you are getting. So, Tayo, is there any particular way you'd like to introduce yourself when introductions are probably not necessary?
Yeah, not much introduction needed. I've been around the corner for a few years now, as well as doing underground estuaries and being part of the group of people that help to facilitate Paul's UK adventures.
He has indeed. And you can actually find some very old videos of Tayo sitting with me and John Van Donk, and Tayo acting very much like, what have I gotten myself into? And well, he should know it's been years, Tayo. So I'm going to bring the next one in, another corner OG, Harris, Ups himself, who many of you have to thank for your membership, because I know whenever he drops the gift, and he also was our host at a wonderful banquet after the art conference. So, Ups, Harris, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. I am Harris. I am Ups. I am from a very small European country called Cyprus. I will always promote my country because I love my country. It's very small, so you can look at it at the map. And I've been blessed to be in London and meet both of these fine gentlemen in person. And I realized the importance of face-to-face encounters. There is nothing like it. And this is the second best thing. So it is one of the main reasons that I participate more recently, trying to be virtually not alone with each and every one of you. And some background about me. I am a researcher. I've been studying since 2004 computer science fundamentals. I'm mainly interested in policy design and policy modeling, but also cognitive science and many, many other things, including this little corner of the internet that I adore. So,
all right.
Last thing, since 2024, but also for this year, I am a member at the Scientific Advisory Board at the Active Inference Institute. That is a cutting-edge institute that has to do with research. And check it out.
All right. Congratulations. What was I going to say? A lot of I know I start a little bit early and I use some of the branding. And I know for some people, the branding is an annoyance and a distraction, but Ups is actually a pretty important part of that branding, because you'll find if you search him on YouTube, you'll find he has a YouTube channel, and he's been involved in both upcycling physical things on Cyprus and a movement all over Europe. And part of what we do with our branding, and really part of what we do with our channels by replaying each other's stuff, is our own upcycling. And so the content that we make, we share between each other and we promote it, and we go that way. So I have a new face in the corner, and you might notice that he has one of those very strange last names that begin with Vander, which might be a tell as to how I know this guy. Now, actually, we have scheduled a randos next week, but I told him that, hey, I'm doing one of these estuary things today. Do you want to hop in? And he said yes. So Ron, I see no Jess and no Nate in the studio yet, so I don't know what happened to these guys. We might have a very interesting Estuary Friday today. I might have to grab 2 people randomly from the hive mind if these guys don't show. But Ron, little 2-minute introduction.
Let's see. Let's see. I have been a pastor, senior pastor, church planter of a church and a movie theater, and then kind of change agent leading a church that grew large through a really difficult gear shift to their next leadership. And along the way, I've done a lot of coaching and consulting leadership wise. And then in 2023, I got really sick and was hospitalized a number of times with what turned out to be a clot in my brain, and came back. I was healthy in 2024, but a slow, very, very slow recovery. I'm now pretty much back full, and I'm 62, and so too early to be done, but not sure exactly how I hop back on the merry-go-round of life or if I want to. So I'm in the process of figuring all that out right now. About a quarter century ago, I got to know my friend Paul better. We'd been in seminary together way back, and we started becoming really good friends, and we were both in Sacramento, California, and have been in touch with him. And now he's saying, why don't you spend some time here? And so I'm looking forward to being with you guys.
All right. Thank you, Ron. And Ron, I think this is probably Ron's, let's see, you watched a little bit of last Friday's live stream or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's about all you know of this whole thing. So he is completely fresh meat. Now, I dropped the link for a moment, but Jess showed up again. And because it's Nate's birthday, I'm going to hold his slot for him. So there's Claire's. This is the way we try to grow our movement. All you who have blood clots, bring us your fuzzy brainness, and we will take you in. So thank you, Ron. I think Estuary is kind of a good way to get going because you can begin to get a sense of the participatory rhythm with how things work here. Now, as Tayo said, probably one of the guys more OG than Tayo here is Jess P. Jess P, not only being the Job guy in the corner and a guy who comes from YWAM roots, and Ron would understand YWAM, but Jess also has the distinction that when I first started doing randos, he kept hitting the link. And I said, Jess, how many randos conversations can you have? He says, well, I know that they're going to stop someday, so I'm going to get them all in. So Jess, typical evangelical missionary, consummate opportunist. Jess, how would you like to introduce yourself to a crowd who probably already knows you as the man who loves the man who really suffered in the Bible?
That was a pretty good introduction, Paul. I'm impressed. Sorry I'm late. Apparently, everything was working fine. I had double checked everything, and then immediately when I joined, all the gremlins start. So it I just got coffee too. But that's pretty good. I'm kind of known around these parts for just talking about the book of Job a lot. I see Job as an apocalyptic transformation book. And that seems to be a lot of the conversation we have around here, and kind of a lot of the process that people are going through personally or looking at culturally. So that's, or civilizationally, as Paul's recent conversation with Jordan Hall talked about. But I'm evangelical. I'm part of a Southern Baptist church. I'm part of the leadership team that kind of helped plant the church 10 years ago. I'm a husband and a father to 3 teenage boys. They're all in high school, middle school, and let's see. Spent time in my early 20s doing missionary work, and I kind of had the strange experience of God calling me out of missions. Usually God calls people into missions work. and so my faith has always had this strange sort of backwards feel to it, because it seems like God always flips things on me so that I don't know why, but anyway. So I don't know, anything else you want to know?
You read the book of Job and you say that it's strange that God flips things on me, and maybe that's why you read the book of Job.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, and if you ever want to get in touch with Jess, you just have to stand in front of a mirror and say the book of Job 3 times, and Jess will appear. So
it's amazing. I'll pop on live streams and they'll be talking about Job, and it just happens.
Here we are. Okay, so again, because it's Nate's birthday, and I don't know, he was the first one to sign up. He signed up like instantly, and now he's not here. But Nate will have no problem sort of integrating into the flow of the Estuary conversation. So we're going to start the protocol. And the reason I rearrange people on the screen is it helps me keep track of sort of the order for the first 3 rounds. And I'm going to let Ron go last because this is his first time. So maybe he'll get a sense of what other people do as we go. But so Estuary protocol is fairly simple. So we've just done the introductions. And then the second round, we pitch an idea to the group. And the idea can be something intellectual, can be something contextual. Now, after Elizabeth Oldsfield's conversation about context collapse, well, we all know the importance of context. It can be something personal. It can be something estuarial. You pitch that idea to the group to try and colonize all of our fertile, virginal brains with your brilliant idea. And then the third round, we will point to whosever idea was the most colonizing, and I will sort of tally up what was the most colonized thing here. And then off we go in the fourth round, which is play, which is free flow conversation. So, Tayo, pillar of the UK estuary, you get to pitch first.
I came into this thinking I was going to pass, but the fact that I'm first sort of makes that a little bit difficult.
And such a small group, passing is difficult because I usually pass too.
But my pick is going to be it's going to be a rare pick, which is estuarial, and it's a reflection on the next stage of the estuary protocol, which is the picking. And often what happens in that stage is what people do is they do weaving of different topics together, and that's encouraged in my estuaries, but that I think might lead to not going into depth on individual topic at the expense of trying to include more topics. So I would, I guess, encourage, if something does grab your attention more than others, have the Neil Daedalus deadass conviction to pick without wanting to weave. That's what I'm putting on the table.
All right, Tayo goes with a quite underused, unless you're John Van Donk, estuarial pick. And the pick is the encouragement to do the weave in round 3. So, Harris, Ups, you're next. What would you like to pitch to us?
Yeah, I think it falls under the contextual category, but maybe it's a little bit intellectual as well. I think it's mostly contextual though. So very recently I realized that while dealing with complex problems, like in my personal capacity in my career, I often tend to use the so-called nested models when I design models. And that basically means that you design a model that is stuck. You design different models that they are stuck inside each other. It is helpful to use this metaphor of the onion. So you have these layers, like the layers of an onion, and each layer encases another one. So this nesting serves multiple purposes, and it is really useful. And what I like to offer here is this idea. In TLC, we are in this little corner of the internet. Of course, we have the OGs, right? Like you, like Jess, like Luke Thompson, Nate. Happy birthday to Nate when he hears this. And then we have, more and more people coming, joining. And I imagining in my imagination is like these layers within the onion. And every year we have, more and more layers, and they are very unique. And I want to discuss this idea further, if it's helpful as a metaphor.
Okay. The onion. Should they be sauteed? Are they best raw on top of a hamburger? The nested onion. All right. Jess, it's your turn up on the mound. Let's hear your pitch.
I mean, mostly I'm thinking about the recent conversation or the clip that you released with Jordan Hall. And then I also listened to Jordan Hall's conversation with Paul Antleitner. And basically he's talking about the end of civilization, kind of the way forward. And he talked about the difference between civilization and community. And community is something that's sort of more foundational and more real than civilization, and that the pillar of community is communion. And for me, well, I mean, these patterns, whenever I listen to Jordan Hall and also John Vervaeke, there's lots of things they talk about pattern wise that are there in the book of Job that's fascinating to me. That well, first of all, that it's in that book, and then second of all, like that they're talking about it without, because I've talked to Jordan Hall about the book of Job, and he was like, yeah, I don't he didn't say he didn't, he obviously understood it, but he couldn't, like, I was seeing these connections he wasn't seeing, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not. But
you were just deeply disappointed that your
I just want everyone to see what I see. But anyway, civilization, community, and communion is sort of my pitch.
All right. Now, Ron, I'm just going to give you a little bit of clue. I'd advise, even though the weave comes in the next round, and you might see how that works in the next round, don't feel the need to build on anybody else's pitch. Your pitch can come from a very different direction. And one way to go about it, I usually use the pitch point play. John Van Donk usually says something to the effect of, what's been on your mind since the last time we've had Estuary? And since you've never had Estuary before, you might be able to say, well, what's been on your mind, Ron? And just put that on the table. So what's been on your mind, Ron?
Well, I've had a lifetime since being on an estuary table.
But not an operating table.
No. I've been thinking, I mean, obviously there's a lot in the news this week, and our fearless president has levied tariffs on all y'all. And what kind of makes me wonder, like, how do you read the news? Like, do I read the news as an American, like what's good for us, and then evaluate whether I think his economic policy is a good one or not? Do I read the news as someone who reads the Sermon on the Mount as a Christian, where Jesus says, love your neighbor? And like, whoa, wait a minute. This doesn't sound very loving towards our neighbors, all y'all. Or do I read it some other way? Like, in the long run, what's going to be the best for our world 20 years from now or 40 years from now, economically or politically? And it just seems like so many of the conversations that I see in the world, certainly in our society in the US today, we aren't even asking the same questions, which is why our answers don't seem to make any sense to each other. And that basically defeats any chance of dialogue. So as I look at what's going on in the news, especially this week with tariffs, which are sending ripple effects all around the world, are we supposed to read the news as citizens of our country, or as someone who is a Christian or Muslim or agnostic or whatever, with a faith commitment or some other perspective.
All right. There's Ron's pitch. I know David Busatil is objecting to the fact that I seldom pitch on these. I actually seldom pitch in real live estuaries too. I only pitch when I must. If I have a small group and everybody's been shy in past, which often happens in very small groups in very regular estuaries like my every week estuary, then sometimes pitch I must. But I feel that I pitch all week, and so I get a little break on Friday. And so with what's on the table now, I don't feel the need to pitch. So I am not going to pitch. We are just going to start the point round or the weave round. Weave doesn't begin with P, so I don't know about Tayo's thing here, but Tayo, take it away. Point or weave, whatever you will do, but just at least give me a sense of priority or hierarchy so I can at least tally.
I'm not going to do much weaving, although I think an opportunity is there between what Jess put on the table and what Ron put on the table. But I think I'm just going to point out Jess's question about the difference between civilization and community, and where does communion fit into those two. That's what I'm pointing out.
Okay. There's Tayo's point. Ups. What do you want to point to?
Yeah, I would like to point towards Ron and his question, because I think that it's very relevant these days. How do we read the news and how do we respond to them? And maybe also how do we respond to potential misinformation? And do we respond as, I don't know, responsible citizens, or do we do it in terms of our faith? So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Harris. Jess, what would you like to point to?
I'll point to Harris's idea of the nested onions. I'd like to hear him talk a little bit more about that, what he means by that, and then also sort of interested in what it means to like keep piling on the layers, and does it ever become too much, or do layers consolidate? I don't know. I have questions.
All right. Nate just says he never sent me the link. So how could I do such a horrible thing on our man's birthday? So I have just sent you the link via email, Nate. So please hurry on in, because the 2 rounds are already well underway. But again, I don't think Nate will have any trouble sliding into this group and participating. There won't be any trouble at all. Ron, now that you've seen other people point, what is a topic that someone else has placed on the table that you would like to point to?
I would point towards Jess's comments about suffering. I've always been intrigued with suffering, not simply because I was raised as a Calvinist, but at least in our society, in the States, we try so hard to avoid suffering, and we often make ourselves miserable trying to avoid it. And I think one of the reasons that the book of Job is held on to in the Bible is precisely because it gives a case study of a much larger view of suffering. And so I'm intrigued with suffering primarily because it's like this car wreck we drive by but can't not look at.
Just like the book of Job, it's this book that Jess can't drive by and just not talk about. So Ron, you've just encouraged him.
Paul kind of rebuked me at the North Estuary. He came by the sound booth. I was sitting in there, and he's like, "This is all the book of Job's fault."
I am going to point to Harris's pitch, because I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about nested models. because what I've been thinking about is trying to understand the relationship between Christianity and all of the various iterations of Christianity that cultures sort of push us through. And so I will, I usually don't mention the weave, but sometimes I do give permission to it because I think the weave is nearly inevitable in the pointing round, where Jess notes civilization and community. And so something that has proven to be so foundational, yet so uncapturable, like Christianity. When I look at Islam and let's say the 5 pillars of Islam, here's 5 things you can do. There they are. Bang. But Jesus, Ron mentions the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gives us things we can't do. It says go do them. And that really scrambles us. And so, oh, good. Here he is. Hallelujah. I'm terribly sorry, Nate, on your birthday,
okay.
Even.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Happy birthday.
No big deal. It's very rare that I'm free for these, but I happen to be with my wife in Yakima. She was here for a conference, and I took some time off work, so.
Oh,
I figured
that's
I'd
why
come
you're
hang
not
out.
in your usual place.
That's right. I'm at a conference center in Yakima.
With pretty
Happy
good Wi-Fi.
birthday.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we'll give you a chance to just accelerate the rounds, Nate.
Okay.
Anything you want to pitch or point?
Well, yeah. I tell you what. I'm in the mood to rant about post-liberalism and how much I hate it. I'm really done with post-liberalism entirely. It's evident to me at this point that post-liberals have no plan whatsoever, and they just want to destroy America. So.
All right. Let's just begin, shall we? And in terms of the tally, I think I sort of have to give it to Jess. But Jess, of course, weaved together or nested together. So now I'm doing a lot of weaving here. Nested together the civilizational collapse thing, and Nate's pitch is right on there with destroying the world, and Ron's also got tariff anxiety, world destruction, and thinking about neighbors. So let's just play. So at this point, we just talk. And that was Estuary for today.
Do you want me to let me bring up just a couple things?
Jess, talk, Jess. Don't ask for permission. Just do it.
All right. Jordan Hall brought up a couple things that kind of stuck with me about this. He's talking about civilization, community, and communion. So he talks about sort of the crisis of civilization we're having. Sort of some of the hallmarks are that the tools that we're using not only don't work, but they cause more problems. So the COVID comes, we crash the economy and drive up inflation. Then the measures taken to take care of that increases political conflict between countries, and we have a trade war now, and how all these things are connected is so complex that basically we don't know how to handle this on a systemic level. Like we're not able to do the things we want to do, and the actions we take and the actions we don't take results in catastrophes. So that's sort of like, and then he talked about when he was living in California, and this is an example of civilization, that he was in a very wealthy part of California, very beautiful, very, very beautiful, very well taken care of, lots of good people, ocean front, large houses, all this stuff. But he started to notice that he would come out early in the morning to go surfing, and there was trash everywhere. And the people that were in charge of picking up all the trash didn't pick it up yet. They hadn't come out to work that day, and later on they had gotten it. But there's sort of this. He said he sort of realized that, oh, this is the facade of a community. This isn't an actual community. This is a outwardly they're trying to make it look like one, and there's enough wealth there to maintain this appearance. And so that's all right. So those are two examples, the sort of global example and a local example. But then he talks about he's in North Carolina, and he's talks about how he's in a real community, not a civilization. So, and the real community has it's very beautiful. Like it's situated here, or situated in the mountains in North Carolina. And the one example that sticks in my mind is that there's all sort of beautifying of the community that takes place, and it takes and the people doing that work are retirees, they're women, they're people that take it on themselves to make sure there's flowers planted, the bushes are trimmed, and it's all volunteer, and it's not necessarily even organized. Just people take care of stuff on their own. And then when there was the 1,000-year flood that hit them, he said they were tempted towards civilization because there's like, you want to impose all these rules and structure and whatever. But what they found out is they actually fell into community, and that their community was actually real, and that they started taking care of each other and watching out for one another, because there's outsiders coming in that maybe trying to take advantage of a situation. They're also, trying to take care of each other's needs, their food and water. So here's these two pictures of civilization and community. And then he talked, not very at length, but he mentioned basically that the foundation of community is not, some sort of systematic structure or organization, but it's communion. And he sort of leaves it open. So I would be open to hearing what you guys think more about that. Obviously, we have the communion, the communion of the Lord's Supper, that the sort of the pillar of the Christian church, especially, in the church that he's in an evangelical, probably Southern Baptist church-ish, and communion's one of the main sacraments, and so, but also communion also involves eating meals together. It also involves other things like maintaining marriages and all the interrelational things that cost people, and they aren't part of the economy, that people make sacrifices for one another in order that things remain good and beautiful and true. So yeah, I guess if anyone has any points they want to jump off on. So we have civilization that's sort of the facade of a community. It has this giant size. The community is something more precious, and it has this sort of sacred foundation.
Yeah, it's amazing that they managed to figure out what was good and true and beautiful without having a big top-down power structure or a monarch to tell them what it was.
The anarchist has arrived. Go, Tayo.
So far, it sounds like the story is community good, civilization bad. In terms of I think the conversation around growth and scale comes to mind. But I think what Ron put on the table, now that we're allowed to do some weaving according to the rule I made up 5 minutes ago, what Ron put on the table was an example of his concern was which posture should I take? Should I take the posture of an American, or as a do I care? Do I have to take a big concern for the problems of the people that the tariffs are going to hit in other countries, or do I just take that? So on that scale, that we're talking both civilization and global. So it's I don't think it's as clean cut as civilization bad, community good, because it's not. There are problems within communities, as anyone within communities will tell you as well. But I think what if I take from what you say, you're saying the problems of civilization are more difficult to solve because there are so many moving parts. Where communities, it's your neighbors and people that you know.
I
Yeah,
think
one thing he used to differentiate between civilizations is civilization will require incentives for people to do different actions. So there'll be a financial incentive. People are paid to do a job. There'll be laws. You'll be punished if you do certain things. But he says if there's a collapse of those things, like in the flood situation, where do people resort? Do they sort of the trappings of the civilization of collapse? Do we actually have community or do we not?
Well, I'm gonna sort of speak for the anarchists and against them at the same time, which is very anarchical. That I mean, a part of what I liked about Jordan's approach to this was that, and we sort of had this with the Paul Kingsnorth talk, that communion begets community because communion is deeply attractive. So, when the monasteries start, everybody sees the communion in the monasteries and says, I want to be a part of that. And so very quickly it scales up to community. So something within us is deeply attracted to communion. Mark Lefebvre talked about the intimacy crisis. And so the intimacy and the trust and the truth, the all levels of truth that we see in communion, that's why romantic love is so attractive, that we are just drawn to it, and why marriage is so attractive. So we're drawn to it. And that then becomes the seed of then community. And then as community kind of continues to level up, it becomes society and culture and civilization, and all these things form. But there's something antithetical between the high layer and the low layers, and all the tiny little imperfections way at the heart of community. As they go up, they magnify. And so the sin at very low levels in communion, in our actual attempts at communion, then at community, they start to irritate. And as they grow in civilization, then they become the seeds of the destruction of the civilization, which is why you get this rise and fall thing. But to bring back to Harris's point, there's so much nesting going on, and there's not one sin that is sort of dominating everything, so that instead of seeing a whole bunch of just sudden complete collapses, we always see these like partial collapses, and then accommodations and accounting, and so I think that's sort of the way that we do it. Now, to sort of get back to some of Ron's question, let's say the fight in the Christian Reformed Church right now over, there's a very foundational fight. There's a very foundational difference going on in the Christian Reformed Church with respect to same-sex marriage. One argument says the way you love your same-sex attracted neighbor is by giving them and expanding marriage to include them and expanding the church to include same-sex marriages. The other is to say, no, the way you love them is to say, no, there's a foundational flaw at the bottom of that if you continue to build on it, you will collapse. So we're going to cut you off at the pass and not permit that in the church. So, and that's just one little item of just a myriad of nested because civilizations are nested communities, and within communities, they're nested communions. And so, at the end of that conversation with Jordan Hall, I mean, he basically says, well, I think the key to the future is for the church to actually, not shrink on communion and continue to scale communion up all the way up. And I almost laughed because on one hand, yeah. And on the other hand, that's sort of what we've been trying and failing at for 2,000 years. So it is the answer, but you just have to kind of know. It's kind of like being the preacher to stand up on Sunday morning and say, I want you to all stop sinning. And that's all I'm going to say. And next week, if you don't stop, I'm going to say it again. So, and there we get into all these other nests.
Well, we keep outsourcing to the state. That's one of the reasons it keeps failing. And that's one of the things that, like, the thing that your conversation with Jordan, and you didn't really, you kind of implied what the church is without actually saying what the church is in that conversation, which I think that's good, because I think that's part of the problem, is that we're still trying to figure out what it is. But we know what it's not. It's not civilization. It's not society. And to point at communion as its roots is definitely headed in the right direction. So then we need to figure out, the key is to figure out, well, what kind of thing is the church? And what is it introduced into reality that did not exist before? And at what point are we going to take the challenge that it presents us seriously, instead of repeating the same old patterns of state and empire?
Okay, I will try to address a bit Nate's pitch. Very recently, I stumbled upon the definition of what deconstruction is, that I found it extremely useful, at least to me, and I want to share it here because I really believe it's insightful. It's from a literary theorist named Terry Eagleton, and he said the following: deconstruction insists not that truth is illusory, but it is institutional. So the whole point there is that to deconstruct is to go against the institutions. So to deconstruct your faith is to go against the institution of the church, right? And maybe in various instances, each and every one of us have felt something like that, not necessarily with the church, but with other institutions. So, yeah.
At which point of deconstruction of civilization do you hit upon the oil of communion? How much civilization is to be gone before we can have communion? And while we're at it, what do we mean by communion? Is it just the sharing of a meal? Because I don't think, given the spirit of the conversation that we're talking about, people that you're with in a restaurant when you're eating, that wouldn't be communion. So are we just talking about friends that you meal with?
Friends for sure. That's one of the most important aspects, right? And when you extend it, like when the stranger, when you are hospitable to the stranger as you are to your neighbor and to your friend, that's communion. That goes back to the notion of philoxenia, of hospitality, of sharing whatever you have. Maybe you have very little, but you still get to share with the other. So, and that goes back to the realization that for the other, you are the other. So, you know.
Yeah. I think Elizabeth Oldfield, in the conversation she had with Sam and Paul, did a really good job at kind of gesturing in that direction with her understanding of hospitality. So, and I'm glad you said hospitality. That's definitely the right word.
Well, part of the frustration that we have with Jesus is, in many ways, when he's talking about the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God, he's basically saying the kingdom of communion. And the reason that he succeeded in perhaps sort of a Girardian way in uniting sworn enemies with each other around the agreement that the world would be better with Jesus dead was exactly that. That part of what neither side wanted was communion. They in a sense could agree. They couldn't agree with what they both imagined was key, but they could agree that Jesus would be dead, and they could agree that they didn't want communion with each other, that they would rather kill each other than live with each other. And that just kind of goes down to the basics of human beings. And go ahead.
No, please finish. It's something very small that I want to add.
No, I'm finished.
Yeah. Going a bit back to this notion of hospitality, it was Jordan Peterson that said the following: "Isn't it very ironic that the least hospitable institutions are the hospitals?"
You know something about that, Nate?
Yeah, unfortunately, more than I would care to.
And Ron knows something about that too. How do you feel about that, Ron?
I don't remember it. But it strikes me as we're talking, like community. I think we live in concentric circles of community. And so my family or my neighborhood is a small circle around me, or maybe my church or the other people in general that I have, my ethnic group here in our city is maybe 250,000 people, and we live in a state of how many, or a nation of how many millions of people. And yet they're all relational circles that we're connected to. And I think part of the problem comes when we're doing things in circles that are too big to respond. I mean, we have to function as nations, but we can't solve conflict very well as nations. On the other hand, if we're lousy at settling conflict as families or in our local communities, it will affect our states or provinces or whatever, and so forth. And so if there's dysfunction in our smallest circles, those same traits, not that leaders in our national governments are going to say, well, you know, Ron's family is bad, so therefore we have to do this. But flaws or dysfunctions that we carry into all of our relationships affect all of those in different ways. And I think that's part of the dilemma, is that we're now encountering changes in our world that require us to think differently about how we do things we've always done with the people we've always done them with.
I loved the portion of the Paul Anleitner Jordan Hall conversation. I thought Jordan gave a fairly clear vision of, maybe it was just clear for me because I've heard it a number of times and it was just I'm just sort of beginning to understand it, but that we do intuitively have a sense of when things are sort of breaking down. And of course, different people have different levels of anxiety and predisposition to anxiety. And we have this at different levels, but we are in a place now civilizationally where you have a sense of, well, things are breaking down. And so when that happens, then people tend to take drastic measures. And so, you know, and that of course triggers another nested thing, which is, are you a gradualist? Or you are no half measures person? And then people will react with respect to that. And I mean, just anarchism by itself is sort of a no half measures thing. But
I'm ready for half measures at this point, Paul. I'm so concerned about the post-liberal threat politically. I'm absolutely going to start voting again, just to make sure that no post-liberals get elected to anything above dog catcher. So,
wow.
What do you have against dogs?
There's Ron.
I say this, and my priest is a self-identified post-liberal, so I'm sure I'll have plenty to hear about this later.
Well, the beauty about being an anarchist is nobody expects you to get along with your priest. So are we done?
That's it.
No, because
No.
I'm still not convinced on what this communion is. Are we saying that the problem solving should be done on the community scale, not on the civilizational scale, or are we saying sense making is done on the community scale rather than the civilizational scale, which in that case would mean the answer to Ron's question is just watch your local news and don't worry about what the rest is doing. Is that what we're saying? Is that a proposition?
Well, it's clearly not Nate's position because he's going to start voting again, which I find terribly disappointing for an anarchist. I would think, I had to try to introduce Jordan Hall to CRC Voices, which is not a small thing. But one of the things that, and of course, with Monday's video about contrasting Jordan Hall from Eric Weinstein, to me, that said a lot in terms of, Eric has been shopping his equation on a mug, and we've got to get off this rock, and we're going to blow each other up. He's been shopping that all over the place for quite a few years. And then when he gets the invite to the big stage at ARC, he basically lays out the whole thing. And Jordan, in some ways, is no less apocalyptic, but he decides, what's the best way to actually address this? Now, I think, Tayo, you're right in that we shouldn't necessarily just be an Essene. And that's what I told him at the end. I said, but you're not an Essene, Jordan. But he realized that even though I very much have to work in my church, and maybe I will continue to vote, and maybe I will have political thoughts sometimes and perhaps share them from time to time, but communion begins at home and at church and in all of our relationships. And one of the things, I don't know how much Elizabeth Oldfield is paying attention to the corner. Obviously, her conversation with you, Tayo, and Chad, and I warn people that I do conversations with that you might get invitations from people that you've never heard from before, and please don't say no because they're randos. And she didn't. And so I think part of what's at the heart of the corner is to do the kind of crazy thing that Grim Grizz has sort of pointed us to with Virtually Not Alone, and ask the question, to what degree can the spirit of communion actually travel through the internet? And I thought Sam articulated it well. To what degree can we sort of hijack these tools of controlling civilization and corruption and actually infiltrate with a spirit of communion, which again, I think is a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you.
I think I think you're right. I think what we're trying to do. And I think the times that in the conferences, the times when we'll be able to get together in person, you can see how that, you can see the fruits of that labor. When we actually do meet in person, there really is a sense of communion that just forms very easily because we've done the groundwork to lay that through the way that we interact online. And then it comes at a time when we actually are able to sit around a table and share a meal together and be in the same physical space, and it's very special for everyone because of that.
Yeah, I wonder if trust is one of those things that's sort of at the core of it. Trust between each other, but also, do we actually trust God? Like it's sort of an existential question. Like there's like a pattern in Job. Let's see if I can describe it real fast. That, like, if we kind of think of terms, the beginning of the book is like Job has, he's very wealthy. He has all this stuff. It's basically civilization established. He's a righteous man. He's doing all the right things, blameless and upright. But there's a crisis, and it's actually seen in, because Job does the sacrifices for his sons, and he says maybe they've sinned in their hearts, and it's clear that they haven't done anything terrible. It's just the possibility that because of the situation, the wealth, the feasts, the everything, maybe there is a chance for sin. So we're going to nip it in the bud. We're going to have this sacrifice and this consecration ceremony in order to make sure sin doesn't take root. So the crisis is just that Job doesn't know what's inside his sons' hearts. And there was one person who kind of like took Job to task for that. Like, how does he not know? I'm like, how do you know inside anyone's heart? Like, you just can't know. And then this is amplified in the scene in heaven. We get Satan and God, and Satan makes basically the accusation against God. He's like, Job's heart's actually corrupt. He's just doing this for the stuff, not because there's any actual true communion between you and him. And God obviously knows all things, so he sees everything, and so why doesn't he just say, no, I know Job's heart, and you can just go kick rocks? But God lets this sort of play out because I think Satan sort of represents the collective question that's happening in the society, which is like, is there some sort of corruption at the core of this, like all this? And basically it's not only just a distrust among each other, it's a distrust of Job, and it's a distrust of God, but it's sort of at this unconscious level. This is why Satan brings it up. And then once the disasters happen, you see that everyone is sort of given over to this unconscious drive, and in a very Girardian way, Job then becomes the scapegoat, because all this is like, I knew there was corruption, I knew that you were wicked, I knew that. So anyway, there's this mistrust, and everyone gets to voice this against him. You know, Job even talks about all the people that kind of rise up against him, not only just his friends that are making arguments, but the people that were around him in the society. And then God comes and speaks to Job, and then Job obviously has a crisis of trust with God too. He's like, what are you doing? Like, at least let me know what's going on. And so God arrives, gives his speech, and Job is comforted. We should at least see that. And so he like God, Job trusts God again, like completely. He's just like, I trust you. I know that you can do all things. I'm satisfied. And then the sacrifice between the friends and Job. And so you see this hierarchy of trust. Then Job reestablishes trust with God. Then the friends establish trust back with Job. And then everyone else gathers into the house of Job, and they eat bread with him. And then, you know, everything just sort of plays out, but everything's reestablished. But it seems like there was a crisis of trust in the very beginning that ends up getting not only reestablished, but it's everyone knew by the end that Job was a righteous man, that you could trust him. Because of how he spoke, and that he wouldn't lie. So yeah, and in that is also like the idea of hospitality. Hospitality is trust between you and the other trusting you. And like so I see in that whole story, it's the collapse of something because of this internal crisis. It's the crisis that we can't see in each other's heart, and there's the whisper that there's something wrong with how things are going. Then basically the trappings have to be taken away in order that we can see. Well, I mean, it may be just that it just has to be like one man. One man has to reestablish all this trust, and then you can that establishes the communion again, that you can build up from. And so I don't know. That's just wanted to tell that to you guys.
That was awesome, Jess. Thank you. What I want to add here is that we can understand community as a chain of trust. And if we also utilize the analogy from Ron of concentric circles of community, we can start having this rough idea of chains of trust and slowly building up on the different levels, starting from oneself to the family, to the neighborhood, to the city, and then to the state and to the global village, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to tie this somewhat unexpectedly, perhaps, into Ron's concern about the situation with global trade, what does it say about our chains of trust when we are engaging in this kind of global trade war and imposing tariffs? Does that represent trust or a breakdown of trust?
It seems to be somebody wants to pull the chains just to see what's going to happen. You know, somebody wants to introduce a little bit of chaos just to get something out of it. And I believe not only for their benefit, but for the benefit of everyone. So, but that's an optimist. So,
have you all eaten Cyprian cheese? They should not tariff that stuff. That Cyprian cheese, we had that in London. That was good. Do not tariff Cyprian cheese. That's all I have to say.
There's this scene in this movie, A Knight's Tale. I don't know if you've seen it. Keith Ledger and anyway, so it's the story of this peasant who basically fakes his way. He fakes the paperwork in order to become a knight, in order to fight in these tournaments, because he always dreamed of it as a kid. And then so he sees this princess, he falls in love with her because she's beautiful, and you know, and he's following her and saying all these things, like he's like, what do I have to do to win you over? And she doesn't know if she can trust him. So there's this, she's like, I don't know who you are, or what are you doing? Or like, he's like, I'll win this tournament for you. And she says, no, you're only doing that for your own honor. If you want to show me that you love me, lose. And so, you know, so he just sits there on his horse, just holding his javelin, and is just getting pummeled. And then, you know, 3 or 4 times this happens. He's like losing the tournament. And, you know, the guys with him that are on his team are like, what are you doing? He's like, I just got to do this for this. I'm sorry, it's this girl. And and then she's like, he does love me. It's true. Like, I've realized the truth. So she sends her maiden down to him, and the maiden goes up to him, and she's like, my lady knows you love her. Now win. And so there's something beautiful in that. Everything has to turn upside down in order to sort of reveal what's inside the heart. And then once that has been revealed, then everything can be flipped back upright again. there's that chaos being introduced in order for the reality to be seen. Because we get suspicious, and sometimes, so like civilization will have all this, the incentives are there that may entice you to not be true in your marriage, or to cheat on this, or to take advantage of this, or, and you get payoffs for these things, but it's eroding sort of the core. And then if all that collapses, what are you left with? Do you have anything to come back to? And so the chaos actually reveals sort of the hidden, what's ever is underneath, inside, that we can't see.
Yeah, we've mentioned Eric Weinstein before, and I think maybe he's still there. After ARC, he visited Israel for the first time after 30 years, and he gave a couple of interviews, one with a lady where he had like the audience there, and he literally asked the audience if they listened to his ARC speech, and a lot of people said yes, and he was very excited. But the second talk he had with an Israeli podcaster, at some point the podcaster asked him, you keep mentioning this story with the nuclear clock. He goes to him, no. We don't need to speak about this here. This is a story I am telling back to the United States because it has mimetic currency there. But maybe you guys also need to hear about this, So he introduced this notion of the mimetic currency, and how he keeps, or I can generalize it, I think, how people keep telling different stories in terms of the different audiences. So once again, it has to do with this notion of chains of trust and how we interact with each other.
So there's broken trust in the power or the ability of civilizations to uphold communities. That's sort of what I'm gathering. In as much as some of the frailties of the community has scaled all the way up to civilization, and now it's difficult to sort of put that back in the bottle. What are the necessary conditions for building trust within our communities? Because just because you're in a community doesn't mean there is trust there automatically. What are the necessary conditions for that to be the case? And I say this referencing back to Jess's retelling of the story of Job, where it's only after Job's reconcile his trust issues with God, to frame it like that, that he was then able to have communion with, where there's trust between him and the people of his community.
So after I applauded Glenn Scrivener and Paul Anleitner's conversation with Jordan Hall, Sam was in the comments saying, hey, I thought my conversation with Jordan was pretty good, and I hadn't listened to it all. So I went back to it this morning and started listening to it more. And Sam has been looking at David Bentley Hart's thing about, trying to get in touch with ontology, and things are moving from epistemics to ontology again now, because of the collapse of sort of this shallow materialism that we're in the midst of. That's sort of the end of modernity thing. And so new patterns, new models of ontology are going to be sneaking into our conversations, even though, it's always, it's a long story. I won't go there. But basically what Sam's such a good listener, and he can often repackage things. That's a lot of what we're doing in the corner. We sort of hear something and we have to repackage it a different way, and we try it out. We keep doing that between each other. But, part of what Sam saw in both David Bentley Hart and Jordan Hall which I think is this shift. And you can see it again in the difference between Eric Weinstein and Jordan Hall, is the quintessential modernist approach was, give me a program or a system or a proposal or a political something that we can vote at or implement or do this or something like that, and that will then fix the collapsing society. And what I hear from both Jordan Hall and David Bentley Hart is much more, once you sort of, and I think the anarchists have something of that in their thingy that they are promoting, once you sort of give yourself to that approach, you have already lost something. Which, and I think when that partly helps me understand Jesus better, because in terms of let's say a program first approach to fixing the world, Jesus is an absolute disaster. He spends his first 30 years just mucking about, doing construction like a loser, perhaps. And then he's going to have 3 years of public ministry. And as Kenneth Bailey notes with his students in Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War, it's amazing he lasted 3 years. And everybody's sort of waiting for him to announce a program. And even as we read back in the Gospels now, pastors always sort of try to repackage it to turn it into a program for our little discipleship programs and spread that out. But it's so freaking hard to do that, because to the extent of the program, Jesus, it's like, Jesus, just tell me what to do. And Jesus says, all right, try this on. Love your neighbor as yourself, all the way up to and including your enemy. There, I told you to do it. Now go do it. Well, that's not a program. I want little individual things, and I want a trade policy, and so what I see.
That.
Right.
What's that? Go ahead, Ron.
You can't replicate that.
Right, you can't.
Yeah.
Because not everyone is you, which is usually what we're trying to replicate.
Right.
Little me's all over the world.
Right.
And so, and so that's why someone like what Jordan Hall is doing now is so, I mean, you can just see his old friends, the people he used to hang out with, Jim Rutt and Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein, and to a degree also John Vervaeke, looking at him and they're like, what? Huh? You moved to North Carolina, and I think he should be a little bit unclear about exactly what church he goes to, because the point isn't, oh, he's found the church with the correct program and we should all join that church and program. His point is, no, you don't need to move to North Carolina to do this, which basically is kind of what Jesus says too. You don't need to go to Living Stones to be a Christian.
Allow me to share a small story. When I was doing my military service for 26 months, because it's a requirement here for all the males, and I was up in the mountains. Okay, it is a very isolated place, but it has this blessing. It's very near one of the biggest, probably the biggest monasteries on the island, the Kikos Monastery. Okay. And while we were there, they decided to take us there for a visit, the whole camp. And it was the first time I was visiting that specific monastery. And I remember I was 17 years old back then. I remember when I entered for the very first time inside, I was so mind blown by the fact that there was everything covered in gold. And I didn't like that. I had this initial, this initial distrust with the institution of the church, to say the least. Okay, because I couldn't understand it. And I know that at least some of the monasteries, they are very simple. Everything is made out of wood, you know. So I had that image in my place, and this new image was very and disorienting for me. And years later, when I visited Mount Athos in Greece for the first time, I got the chance to ask one of the fathers there, Father, why do we have all this gold inside some of the monasteries? He goes to me, my son, it is the most precious metal, and it's the only that we can offer us as the best gift to venerate the Lord. So, yeah, that brought me some comfort and helped me restore my trust to the church. So.
It's also because the monasteries were so inspirational, people kept giving it, and it's like, what do you do with that stuff? I mean, what can you really do with gold? Well, maybe let's just plaster it to the wall and, you know, something with it at least.
I want to see living stones gold plated one day.
You don't know how funny that is. Ron does.
It come out of a spray can.
Some tagger.
Yeah.
Seems like one of the things we're stumbling across in talking about this topic is to what extent is our difficulty getting along a contextual, circumstantial kind of thing, or to what extent is it intrinsic inside of us? And so whether it's tensions in a marriage or in a family or in a city or a nation or international tensions, tariff wars, whatever, is the problem that there's something wrong with the situation. You know, big national issues are hard to deal with, but with a family it's easier, or marriage stuff is really hard, but citywide things in our towns are easier. To what extent are they circumstantial, or to what extent are they inherent in us and they just come out in differently in all these different settings? And in my experience, a lot of the biggest problems I've ever had, or that I see in the news today, come from within us. Like there's something that's inherently self-absorbed and short-sighted inside my own heart or in all of ours. And as a result, we kind of get in each other's way or do what we can to impede each other's efforts to be fulfilled. And that's why community on any level is so difficult to develop and maintain.
I think one of the things that makes it more difficult to develop community than it has been in the past is that the probability that you're going to have a set of shared collective representations with any given person is getting smaller and smaller because ironically, when the previous century mass media technologies came out, it actually did a lot to increase that, so that people were more likely to have similar collective representations over larger population groups, because radio and television were like, when they first were introduced as a technology, there were very few channels and everybody was kind of like, you know, listening to and watching the same things. And now in the age of the internet, it turns out that our collective representations are shared with fewer and fewer people and smaller circles. And so a lot of and so the community also becomes more and more shallow as it gets formed over narrower and narrower interests. So like one of the things that's put me in this mood that I'm in politically is that I just think that I feel very few people. I see very few people, even on the political right, where I should be able to rely on it, just giving a shit about America and things that are American in a way that's actually meaningful. So my remedy for that is it's my birthday today, and I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna go out for, it's a Friday and in Lent, so we're gonna go out for fish and chips. And it's also my birthday, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit, but I still won't eat meat. There we go. And then we're gonna watch John Wayne's The Cowboys, and I'm gonna enjoy it unironically.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are these problems that come out of us, but also there's the opposite that's also true too. Like one good person can bring everyone together in ways that I've seen in my own life. Just and so it kind of runs both ways, and so we need a lot of good people to be able to you know, not just maintain, but just like have communities. And so I guess it's like, you know, God, could you use me to do that in my community? And, you know, and then it just starts with the simple work of like, you know, my own relationship with God is sort of like the communion, the foundation that's sort of based on, you know. So yeah. Because I think like a lot of the problems can, you know, when they come up, and you know, they have in our community, and they kind of get sorted out, you know, and some of them linger on, and kind of there's residues and all this stuff, but for the most part, we haven't had to deal with something completely tragic, like, you know, someone cheating on their wife or stuff like that. So we haven't been tested to that level, but you know, hopefully we could make it through somehow. But even just like having storms roll through and power outages, and how everyone steps up and, hey, I've got a generator, I've got this, here, I'll bring the chainsaw over and we'll cut the tree down if she can't afford to have a tree company come out, and you know, that kind of thing. So,
and this is why I knew. So, you know, the strange thing, Jordan Hall converts. It's like, what's going on with this? And then he's in this community. It's like, if he was living in the panhandle of Florida and a hurricane hit his community, I'd say he's living in the panhandle of Florida. But he's living in the hills of North Carolina and a hurricane decimates his community. It's like, I don't know. Kind of looks like the finger of God. How often do hurricanes hit the mountains of North Carolina, especially where you have this recent convert with a rather unique background and rather opportunity for visibility? And it's like, so that's why I really wanted to, I told him, I said, after that thing, people start messaging me, is Jordan Hall okay? It's like, I don't know. Why wouldn't he be okay? And then I don't know the geography of North Carolina. It's like that hurricane went through where he lives. And I thought, oh. So then I just sent him a message. I said, you know, once you're okay and everything's settled down, I want to talk to you, because again, this is where we get into this programmatic versus this communion, where, because I thought what happens in that hurricane is going to form him in his early faith pretty significantly. Because, all right, and I completely understand the fact that he's traveling all over the world, tasting the menu of, you know, spiritualities and new religions. And then he goes to this place where you've got these churches, and suddenly he discovers, oh my goodness, like people are inviting me to birthday parties, and there are potlucks, and there's wholesomeness. I wasn't surprised by that. But now a hurricane goes through, and how does this community react? And I'm not really surprised by how that goes either. And the truth is that you will find this in red and blue states. You will. And you will find, and so, and it isn't like I'm not an anarchist, and Nate hasn't sort of been able to suck me into that yet. But, and so I think actually, you know, we do have to operate all up and down the stack, but there is a heart there that is integral. And that, again, I just look at, Jesus isn't on any big radar screens outside of the little corner of Galilee and Judea for a couple hundred years. And then people start noticing that this virus has gotten into people and it's acting in strange ways. And I think that continues even through and despite Christian civilization. Well, this is the quietest group I've had online. I don't know. It's all the OGs that, I even brought a pastor in because pastors are always gabby and Ron's just sitting there chilling. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I wonder if Tayo is still unsatisfied with any.
Oh yes, I'm always unsatisfied. Of course I am. But I'm satisfied with this. It sounds like we're saying go be a good neighbor, and be famous for 5 miles, rather than worrying about being the one to save civilization, which all sounds great, and I'm very much in favor of. And actually, the village that I live in, the fish and chips I showed just now was brought to me by a neighbor. So I went off screen to go pick that up because there was a knock on my door. So I am all for the communion of the community. I thought two things. I think the conversation around trust, there's a lot more meat on that boat, as far as where is the trust, when is the trust, and who to trust. I think those conversations, that negotiations always happening in the community, and some communities are more firm than others. But the other thing was when Nate was given the example of the damage the internet has done, and how sort of radio and TV offered a different value that the internet thought was going to maximize, but actually ended up ruining, which is having a not a shared narrative, but something that we're all paying attention to. And the internet sort of dispersed that. It's in the dispersing of that we've got this, where communities are being fragmented. So in a way, it's this TLC project is a way of trying to reclaim community via the mess up of civilization or internet, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to say something about, I have, after years, a little quicker on the trigger with some people using the ban hammer. And, to me, it's a continuing clarity about, I didn't mind so much with that particular individual. I don't know how to name this person, because this person insists on coming by with different handles every week. And I don't know for sure it's the same person.
We
but
Baron the Third.
That's right. But by his or her fruit, them. And it's not the, I will have way more if you show your face on here and tell me I'm an asshole and cuss me out, I'm not really going to be bothered by that, because you've shown your face. And the difficulty is there is, in order to actually begin to build communion, you need to have skin in the game, because you can't do the trust thing until you at least show a little, give a little. And because it's that little on which the trust begins to grow. And so trust was the winning topic at last week's Livingstone's Every Week Estuary. And so we were talking about trust in a variety of ways. And then the issue came up of 12-step groups. And what's really amazing about 12-step groups is, if you're dealing with addicts, the only thing you can trust them for is it's to drink or to do drugs. But even on that, you can begin to build trust. That the sponsors, when they start with someone, it's like the only thing I can trust you for is to cheat and lie and steal and destroy your life. So we'll start there. But if the person doesn't even come and show their face and be a bad actor with their face, then there's no point in playing the game.
I think Sam and his conversation with you and Elizabeth Oldfield showed a really deep understanding of that and how that works in here, because he talked about how the kind of the process is that you used to be on your channel, but now it's kind of got diffused because there's so many other little satellite channels around you now. But you go on and you tell your story, and you let us get to know you, and you build that trust, and that's how you become part of whatever it is that we're doing. So we've intuited correctly the role that trust plays in trying to build something, some kind of community, even if it is a virtually not alone online version.
If I may, on that point, just because you come on and tell your story doesn't mean people will like you. It might actually make them dislike you even more.
That's true.
That's very true.
We do have some people that I really do. I remember one person talking about my father, and he was someone. It was Derek Ron in our cluster, and I sent, when my mother's church comes vacant, I'm going to make sure she has a good pastor. So I make sure that they get the right folders and files. So Derek got a chance to know my father, and Derek is like, yeah, your father, he would be nice to Hitler. And it's true. It's true. And growing up with that could be a little frustrating at times, because I'd continue to watch him, get taken. And he was a smart man. I think many times he knew he was getting taken. But he did have lines too, because you need lines too. But you're exactly right, Tayo. Just because you come on here and act doesn't mean anybody's going to like you. In fact, chances are good in a community like this, someone will hate you.
Well, the freedom for dissent is essential to a community. Otherwise, you're just going to have a group of yes men or yes people. So that's essential.
Yeah, we got that one guy in my Bible study here at church.
Oh yeah, you told the story. Yeah.
Every Sunday he brings up the same stuff, and he's always angry about it, not happy, and there's nothing you can say to resolve any of it for him. And it's just the same every week. It's hilarious. But we trust him to do that.
That's right.
It's hobby.
Amazing what you can build trust on. And that is also part of community, because here at Living Stones, and part of why small is beautiful, because in some ways there's just no hiding if it's small enough and if it's long enough, and that's part of the reason I love my church. If you come in on Sunday morning and you look around, a lot of it'll be like one of the guys who he's getting baptized this Sunday. I was in the parking lot with him a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, every now and then I wonder, should I do this? Because I first got here and, he came in through the internet and he watched the Freddie and Paul show, and hey, it's authentic, and hey, it's this, and hey, it's that. Once you start living in it, it's like, yeah, people are a lot, but that's the same thing you go through in a marriage. You fall in love, and this person is wonderful and they're everything. And yeah, give it a few years. You'll stop projecting on this person, and they'll stop projecting on you. And before you know it, something ugly is going to come up, and it's going to be, yeah, now you're actually married to that. So what are you going to do? And that's when really that's when the work begins. And the gold begins, and the glory can begin.
Seems like this is like a relational ontology almost.
Yeah.
Luke would be proud of me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, I still agree with Mark Parker. These people leaving here for Lent, come on. You know, I miss Luke so much. It's really hurts.
Yeah, I gave Luke a hard time about that because it's like, it's like if you're gonna fast, like just do the traditional fast. Don't make up some nonsense of your own. Just like anyway.
I mean, I will say part of the reason why I joined this live stream is because Luke hasn't been around to like goad me into conversation. So I was like, I gotta talk to someone. When I saw you send out the link, Paul, I was like, I'm joining.
All right. Glad you were here, Jess.
Thanks.
All right. I'm gonna drop the link because you guys are so polite with each other. Tayo, that fish and chips, how is it? It looks good.
I'm gonna have mine later. I'm sure it won't be as good as Tayo's.
Okay, so let's do the takeaway rounds, or at least the final comments round. And I want to hear from Ron because Ron, you're a newbie. So how's it going for you so far?
Good. Life often involves a lot of immediate questions of what you're going to do, or each particular day's details, and most of the larger issues that we deal with in our world are a composite of all sorts of like little details, like pixels. And so this is a chance to talk about the larger pictures, the larger dynamics or principles at work in those different situations. And I find that refreshing. And I'm usually not hungry for fish and chips, but I'm starting to work on it right
now. My little village, we've got something called Churches Together in Saddleworth, which is a network of different churches of all sorts of denominations working together to make sure there's a Christian presence in whichever city or town this program is taking place. And currently, what my community are focused on is justice for Palestine, which is a global and civilizational conversation. And I think what my takeaway from this conversation is to just be there, show up, and do as I'm told, because that's my community, and serve them best I can.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's awesome to be once again here, and also to meet Ron, and get the chance to, at least in this virtual setting, to participate in an Estuary with Nate. That's awesome. And also everyone else. And what I want to say is that I really believe that this notion of trust, as Tayo said, can be further explored within TLC. And concerning that metaphor that I've used with TLC being like a nested like structure, like an onion, I will be glad to discuss it further with Jess. So I'm up for that.
Maybe on the 30-minute show with Aris and Afro.
The 30-minute, the show I've not yet done anything with. I'm sorry. I want to say something about Harris with respect to Christian civilization, because so many of these things are so difficult because they sort of defy a lot of our hard lines. But part of what UPS has shown in this corner to me is the value of Christian civilization in terms of its formation. When we're in the UK, he gathers us around with a friend of his, and he sets a table before us. We didn't have any enemies to be present in front of, but it was still very Psalm 23. And I think in this corner, he has, in his quiet, very generous way, shown us that Christian civilization can form us, and that, in fact, I don't think you can say the kingdom of God and not and simply dismiss the idea that communion can't continue to scale up, and dismiss that possibility completely. So, and I think, to me, Harris has quietly been a person in this corner that has demonstrated that, because he is, he's from this small island in the Mediterranean that most of us have never been to. And we can read in the book of Acts when the Apostle Paul gets there. And Barnabas supposedly perhaps was from there. And I'm sure there's some shrine or something about Barnabas on your island, because the Orthodox do that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, he was the founder of our church.
Yeah. So to me, when I have all of my anxieties about Christian civilization, I think about Harris and I think, maybe.
Thank
oh boy, we have a ton. So Ron, what happens now is we look at this. Look at this. It is now chaos. So the official Estuary session has ended, and now all the people that have been frustrated but want to play rush into the room, and I'm going to take them in order of how they've come. So Alex, did you cut your hair or you just have it back?
No, I did cut my hair. I lost the bet.
Oh!
No, I'm
What
kidding.
say you, Alex?
So very interesting conversations that you guys had, and as of late, everything that has been coming through the TLC has been awesome, and I think that's what's so special about the corners, that the world does what the world does, and it's always
I am not hearing anything.
It's trying to fix things instead of trying to fix the person. And so we never, we make technology, we upgrade technology wise, but human behavior not so much. And the TLC, even though people have different opinions and whatnot, it's different. It's a different mentality. It's a different spiritual insight. It's different. And I've looked around, and there's not too many places like TLC and the satellite channels as well, by and large. And I was just recently watching one of I think it was Nate and Luke and I forget the lady's name, but they were talking about C.S. Lewis, the hideous strength, and about how that it was written so long ago, and then we now see whatever he was predicting that might happening. Anyways, what I'm saying is I've learned so much just from hanging out. Even when I don't participate, I still grow.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Mark D. Parker, what say you?
Well, I really came on just to test my my brand new shiny the last of the pre-tariff MacBook Airs. And I'll be the envy of my dystopian neighborhood next year. And the value
The
of this
dystopian neighborhood of Redlands, California.
That's it. Amongst the rubble and of suburbia.
But a very lovely rubble in Redlands.
So, well, give us time. I'm curious. Nate's determined to not. I'm not even sure what a post-liberal is, but that'd be an interesting. A whole other discussion would be what that is. I'm not sure. I don't know how. To me, it seems like we can keep saying we're not going to let this class of person in or this category of politics in, and keep swinging that pendulum, and it just. What we're experiencing, mentioned the tariffs, this is a result of 30 years of resentment that's been building up within a large portion, within an increasingly large or growing portion of the country. It's a kind of class warfare. they'll lose. Something else will come in, but if it's constantly fueled by resentment. So what I'm asking the panel is can you imagine us moving beyond the resentment? How do we do it? And would that have a civilizational effect?
You mean the resentment of the world having been under?
Stop playing the game of resentment. I mean, because it's what we're doing. What, like my wife and I are now, because we're like, well, where would we immigrate? At that stage, she's at that level of anxiety.
Yeah.
And I'll go wherever. I'm like, okay, sure. Portugal's nice. And, so she's the hill I die on, right? So I'll go wherever she wants to go.
With or without a uniform.
That's it. But it seems like we're never going to end this if we don't let go of resentment. I mean, I understand I know a lot of people who are in government work and are feeling the pain, and then it's going to ricochet all over the place, and it's going to build, but all of this is the result of resentment. Remember the big whooshing sound Ross Perot predicted 30 years ago? Well, this is the effect of the big whooshing sound. Now the whoosh is coming back. Whoosh is just like the ocean. It comes and it goes. You don't agree, Paul? You're skeptical.
No. I look at the news. It's like, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. And I agree with you about resentment. Resentment is poison to the soul. And anybody who harbors it, whether they feel it's justified or not, is putting their own soul in jeopardy. And if they act out of resentment, they're just multiplying the poison in the world. So, and that doesn't mean, and so that's sort of my first thing. I'm a pastor, not an economist, so that's what a pastor should say.
But economy is theological, though. So I don't think really, and I mean that quite seriously. You should read Bulgakov's Philosophy of the Economy sometime, Paul. I think that will give you an appreciation of just how theological economy can be. But
I still have the tarot book to read, which it's in my office, and people look at it like, pastor.
But, remember, I saw something with Jordan Hall, where he said that it was a recent interview, and he said the solution is he sees it as all spiritual. He's gone all in on the woo. I mean, he's like said something along the lines that the answer to our problems are not material. I wish I had the quote perfectly in mind, because he said it very well, but he really sees it as in a revival, an embrace of the gospel, and to deal with the society's problems. We're just going to keep ping-ponging between.
All right, Dale, adding first, before you tell us what you want to tell us what you're doing. You're obviously soldering. Oh, very
stained
nice.
glass. We have an auction for school every year, and I make up some piece of the church stained glass windows, and we auction them off for stuff for the school.
All right. Okay. What say you?
Well, I was first going to ask you about your band stick, because I've been in the online industry since '95, running gaming communities since '95, just because of the business I'm in. And the longer I get, part of it is because of my divorce, but I start to recognize certain types of personalities that I don't suffer at all anymore. I mean, they're gone. I mean, you start to recognize them more and more in the online world. That I don't know the person you're talking about, but they have the narcissistic type attitude that they aren't there for anything real other than to cause pain for everybody. And they're just gone. I mean, they just don't get my attention at all. They're just gone. And I was wondering if you experienced anything like that.
Well, I don't like banning people. And it could be that I'm just getting old and tired of a few people. But again, to me, sort of the metric is in this community, Anselman hasn't shown his face, but I think Anselman expresses his views, which are, we all kind of know Anselman's views, but he doesn't play games with different accounts or anything like that. He just tells us what he thinks. And so I don't have a problem with Anselman. I don't have a problem with some other people who, hate me. And I don't have a problem with any of that. But I have more of a problem if someone's going to be here for years and never really take like the next step in, then I don't know. And so then if they're going to seem to just have, really play some, either just be an NPC or there's a few people that play much deeper, I think, more destructive psychological games. And if I get a sense of that, it's like, that's it. So I haven't done it. It's been just very few. And I tolerate a lot of people that a lot of people think I shouldn't tolerate. So
well, I have the exact same thing, but there's just once I see that their only intention is to cause disruption and never get to an end point, it's like, I have no time for them anymore.
Yeah.
The other piece was on the resentment. I hadn't thought of this when I signed in, but it's something I struggle with constantly due to my ex. I mean, just because she was so caustic that the custody evaluation wanted to give her supervised visitation only before I got the kids. That's how bad it was. Well, I'm struggling constantly and always got to remind myself, make choices not to piss her off, make choices which are best for you and the kids. That just ignore her. And that's how I always struggle with resentment. I mean, just to not let that creep in, make your choices based on what's important to you, not what's going to do bad to the other person.
Yep. All right. David Jonathan Busatil, you are here to save the stream for Matt. So take it away. Save us.
Well, part of why I wanted to jump on was actually because of Jess, which is a bit back. Yes. Good job, Jess. Which is and a connection with something you've said before, Paul, about how human beings are endless. And that really has opened up something in my mind about our ability to be eternal, like to go on forever, is somehow in the fact that it's with other people. Where like I don't know if we have to be outside of time, and because otherwise we'll get bored, because human beings really are endless. And I saw a moment like that when Jess was getting emotional about the ending of Job. Because if anyone ought to be bored by the ending of Job by now, it should be Jess. so that he was like, oh, like it was hitting him. I'm like, really? Still? Good for you, man. And that to me is the aspect of scripture where there's a couple of stories where every time I read them, I'm like, this makes me feel bad or makes me feel too good or whatever. It's we're in the Bible study on Jacob's channel. We just covered the story where Amnon rapes his sister, and then the text says, and then he hated her. He hated her more than he loved her. And every time I read that story, it doesn't matter how many times I just go, ugh. Like it's so human. It is endless. Like you're able to do it over and over again.
Yeah.
That was kind of the bit that Jess inspired me to jump on for.
All right, Jess, can you explain to us why are you leaving us?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to Ty.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Good to talk
Happy
with you.
birthday, Nate. Thank you, Jess.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you,
Good to see
Ron.
you.
You gotta bow out. You can bow out whenever. Great to see you again, Harris. Jess, why are you not tired of the end of the Book of Job?
I have no idea. Like And it's different every time. Like different aspects will hit me. So like in the speech of God, for example, like for a while I couldn't talk about the ostrich without crying.
I was going to say, please say the ostrich. It's so of all the bits, not the dragon that shows up. None of that. Just like an ostrich can outrun a horse, you know. It's just like,
but then after a while, like I could talk about the ostrich, but I couldn't talk about the lions. And like the lions, like it was just always one thing or another. But it, you know,
and this time, that was part of it. Is the part that got to you was this time around was everyone being nice to him at the end.
Yeah,
I love it that Job never knew what hit him. To me, that's the power of the story.
Wow. So in other words, that's where they really messed up trading places.
That's
that, you know, Eddie Murphy learns that these two old Dodgers have a bet for $1, and Job never gets it.
Yeah.
Wow, the ostrich. I love that.
Have you ever cried about the ostrich, Paul?
I have never cried about the ostrich. Not once. I've never cried over any ostrich. Not even.
But Paul, don't you realize that the ostrich completely changes our understanding of how God takes care of us? That's the point of the ostrich.
My understanding about how God takes care of us.
How is it that we get taken care of? If an ostrich could just lay its eggs on the ground, like it doesn't even care about it. It doesn't even care. And yet it can outrun a horse.
And you can ride one.
Yeah.
All right, Luke.
Thanks, David.
What say you, Luke? You have to unmute first before you can say.
There we go. Yeah, well, another conversation here touched a little bit on tariffs and just kind of looming chaos, uncertainty. And my wife and I were having a conversation this morning about tariffs. We have a store. It's a gift store, so a lot of our products come from China overseas, and so it's going to have huge effects on us. But one thing that I've just been meditating on, with everything, with having two sets of twins and just in life kind of not exactly going the way I thought it would, is just in our conversation this morning with the tariffs. It's like we almost have this expectation that things are supposed to just continue the way they've continued before. And I think I've kind of challenged myself to think, why am I entitled to expect for life to just be the way it's always been? I mean, there are these moments of change and transition. And we just happen to be in one. And it's crazy and disruptive and scary. But I'm just having to just really modify my framing of what's going on and trust. I mean, I constantly think about the story of Christ sleeping in the boat in the middle of the storm with his disciples freaking out, and there's just something about that story that my mind keeps turning to, because it feels like we're entering a storm. Sometimes it feels like Christ is sleeping. Like, why are you letting all this happen? But, he's there. Anyway, that was just what I wanted to add.
It brings to mind Matthew 24 when Christ talks about the destruction of the temple. Like, he talks about a bunch of different places, but this is where he's talking about the signs of the end of the age and the abomination of desolation. It's very it's a terrible chapter, because he's basically talking about the destruction of Jerusalem that's going to happen. And what's amazing about that, and Paul, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time Matthew's writing this down, Jerusalem is still there, the temple's still there. It's not till
so. I believe the Gospels are pre.
Right. And so Matthew writes this down, this warning, Jesus' warning, and it says stuff in there like, woe to those that, have young children and that are pregnant at the time, it's going to be very difficult. But there's what's amazing is that when Jerusalem is sieged and sacked and the temple's destroyed, there's no records of any Christians dying in that event. So we were studying it earlier, and I was just amazed by it. I was like, that's amazing that Jesus tells them this, and that Matthew writes it down before it happened, and then when it happens, everyone takes heed to it, and they all they're dispersed. It's a tragedy, but they're all sort of saved.
That's why, when he said, we're going to go down to Jerusalem. I'll be turned over into the hands of Gentiles. I'll be crucified. On the third day, I'll rise. And they didn't believe him for that. Then when it's all coming down, remember what he said about the resurrection? Let's believe him this time,
Right. Well, and even before he goes, before he's handed over and stuff, he tells his disciples all this stuff, and he's like, and the disciples are like, "Oh, now we understand you. You're speaking plainly. We understand." And he's like, "You don't. You're going to be scattered. You're not going to believe. And it's only afterwards that they do." So, but
every now and then, I feel like the preparation is such a blessing, though. Like for me, for COVID. I had this kind of experience, which was just like, I feel like all my life I was training for this moment where I felt very happy. I became like, it was one of those things where, what's his name? Peterson talked about, you want to be like the best person at a funeral is what you're actually like training for. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was like ready for a bunch of this stuff, but none of the
said, "Our moment has arrived. Lock down, bring it on."
But to help people in these things and to be able to see something coming from very far away and actually feel like you've been prepared for it as best you can, that there's something beautiful in that as well. Like the image of things being ripe. Like one of the things that I see, I used to work at a funeral home, is one of the hardest bits about grief is that people are convinced it's not going to happen. And so the first thing they have to overcome is the reminder that it's actually real. It's like, it's the biggest part of it is like, oh, I didn't know, right? And I had a close friend of mine die when he was like, when we were both in our very early 20s. And everyone who visited, he had a brain tumor, and he died over the course of like 2 years. And all of the people who visited him all along the way while he was like deteriorating were the ones crying the least at his funeral. We were prepared for this moment. We did the grieving over the course of, actually, I think it was more like 3 years. We grieved over 3 years, and we were fully prepared for it. But some of the people that didn't see him since high school, they're the ones who are like pouring rivers because they didn't heed the warning. They just went, I think he means something else by take up your cross. Like, I think he means something else, right?
Like having to eat fish instead of barbecue on Fridays. That's what Jesus is talking about, right?
Yeah. That's what I think that's it, right?
I always thought the Catholics were cheating because I'd much rather eat fish and chips than a lot of beef on Fridays. And I see them entering into Lent, and they're eating seafood all the time in New England. I'm like, what is this Lent thing you're talking about? That sounds awesome. I love seafood.
Well, then, okay, sorry. Going back to something that was said before, I actually think that that's one of the problems of some of the people with ideas about Christian nationalism is that it makes them go, wait, I thought the Bible told us this wasn't going to happen. Like it actually, the wrong view of prosperity theology makes you ill-prepared for the way that life actually is. And it's just like, oh, apparently you guys never read the book of Judges, eh? Like there's just, there becomes this idea that people are unprepared, and that's the that's part of what's so frustrating about some theological perspectives is you're like, you're going to be at a funeral. It's going to happen.
I have to say, kudos to West Coast refugee who came on camera. He, maybe had to go away, so he didn't get a chance to say his piece. You're welcome to come on again and say your piece, but he is ban proof now. Look at that. There he is. There he is. We have his face, and we know what you look like. So. No, it's true. We there's no temptation that's not common to man. I mean, we think it's not going to happen to us. And yes, where was it? I'm trying to remember which conversation it was when. Oh, I think it was with my conversation with Ross Bird. He mentioned, he went to like Slovakia or Slovenia, and if you go there, like all the people, they think they don't have any agency at all to control their life because their politics has been so bad. They were stepped on by the Soviet Union, and he's like, the whole nation is like, they have no agency in some ways because they just expect. I mean, why can Putin just keep throwing young men from Russia into this meat grinder and the civilization doesn't erupt and say enough? But it's all this formation that we're a part of, and we Americans we're just so wealthy and have had it so good for so long that when that was a piece that I really loved about Jordan Hall's conversation too, because I remember there was a time in about 10-15 years ago when people were talking about all these we have all these disadvantaged communities and I said, well, please show me all the shalom in the advantaged communities, because what I've seen from the people who live in like the worst area of town where I am versus the people who live in the best area of town, it's just prettier buildings with more landscapers, because you don't have to go too deep into the highest earning zip code of your town and not find drugs and alcohol and cheating and all of those things. In fact, in some ways, they're worse. Matt had a great comment. I worry that Jordan Hall was converted in a way by discovering lower middle class America. There is something to that. And I've seen that again and again. It's so funny too, because like a lot of the anti-immigrant thing, I completely understand how unfettered immigration can destabilize your social matrix. I get that. But the truth is, so often in communities like mine where immigrants move, many of those immigrants have at least their community together. They know how to love their children. They know how to do an honest day's work. They know how to have a church. And when I see that compared to a lot of Americans that have way more money and way less community and zero communion, it's like, I'll pick the immigrants every day because they know how to be human beings. And so much of what we've done in America is just destroy people. So
I think the perception problem is something because it's something that we take for granted as far as what reality is from our own brain, not realizing that there's 8 billion people. And not only that, every century has those realities. Every century that's passed for the last 3,000 years, that's a lot of people's experience of their normal. And I guess the upside to working in a place where people come in when they hit rock bottom, and they're at their end of the rope, is that the advice is given is like, okay, first of all, ignore what the politics, ignore what the war in Europe, ignore this, ignore all that stuff. And it's about what can I do, right? So it's like rebuild the person, structure, truth, good habits versus bad habits, swapping out this for that. But very seldom do we hit the next level about the spirituality, about the inner self, right? The being born again. But I mean, if we just ignore everything else but the thing that Jesus said to do all along, it becomes plain. And it's not that being a Christian is simple, because it's not, and not that it's easy, because it's not, because every day is a challenge to not revert to our old sinful nature. But if we ignore the media, to give it a, for lack of a better word, to ignore the noise and to focus on what can I do better for Christ? What did God tell me to do? And how can I do that so I can have a better relationship with my wife, with my kids, with my neighbor, with my community, with my fellowship at church, with the Bible study group, on it goes. And that, like I said, but first we have to ignore what most people can ignore, the news and everyday and the politics and all this narrative. Not that it's not happening, because it is, but learning what to ignore, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and learning what is important.
Yeah. If you find so Alex works in a locked psych ward. If you find yourself in a locked psych ward and all you can talk about is Donald Trump, you're in real trouble.
Wasn't that a layer in Dante's Inferno?
A rewrite of Dante's Inferno could be a lot of fun these days. David, why don't you write a play about that? Why don't you rewrite Dante's Inferno and we'll act it out in the TLC?
Too many plays to write. I'm actually trying to write a play about judges, by the way, Paul. I know you said that you were just trying to finish it. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
So we just finished reading in our men's Bible study at Living Stones. All we do is reread through the books of the Bible, and then we just talk about it. And, for some of our people in the room, this is the first time they've read or heard any of these things. And you get to the end of the book of Judges, and they're just like...
It's a tragedy. Yeah. It's a beautiful tragedy. That's the first thing I covered on the Bible study that I did for Jacob on Jacob's channel. And my belief is that you're supposed to have a depressing sigh at the end of that book. Like, you're literally supposed to go at the end. But trying to connect a couple of things, there's a section of Judges that I want read before every single election, which is, it's like, I think every single church before the election should read the parable of the trees. Do you know the parable of the trees?
Yes.
Where it's like the trees want a leader. Who are they going to pick? Well, the fig tree's busy making figs. Olive tree is busy making olives. It's blessing people with anointing and all this stuff. The vine is busy because it's making wine that's cheering the hearts of men and God. Who's not busy, though, is the bramble. The bramble.
Thorn bush is not busy.
The thorn bush is willing to be our leader. Wonderful. Like that little bit should be read right before we go into elections.
That's awesome. Very true. Very true. I don't know. Ron Copperman is instructing Clint to please prepare the Death Star. I haven't been following along in the chat, but I guess it has come to that. One of the things, the realizations I had here is, because one person in the UK, it was very interesting because he's a super smart guy. He's come to multiple events in the UK when I've been there. He's got a great story. He's really, he started the Peterson thing where, sort of sorted his life out, and he's married and has children. He goes to church. He's a pillar of his community. His job is settled. And he was the one that said to me, he said, this branding that you do, because I did these live streams from the UK talking about ARC. He's like, and he made a really important thing. He said, the branding is annoying to me to a degree because it suggests to me that there are inside jokes and I feel most outside because there are inside jokes. And it's like one of these interesting things that, and another one of these dynamics that make this all very difficult, because on one hand, and every church deals with it, because if you go into a church, churches are sort of resistant to the visitor because there's an inside to it. And so, and the passage from being an outsider to an insider, it has to have pain and strenuousness to it. Otherwise, the inside doesn't mean anything, and the inside has to mean something. And so, and so this is one of the dynamics that we're always wrestling. We have the same issue with the, let's say the on-ramp question, because again, someone recently said, I've just started watching this stuff and it's really interesting and I really like it, but you guys throw around these words, and churches of course have Christianese, and so I don't know. And I think, when we're talking about communion, by nature, communion is exclusive to a degree. The exclusivity of communion, and then to community, and even society often, you just can't get away from it, because I don't know if any of you can help me with that.
Well, at my church, we have hash browns.
You have hash browns?
Yeah, we have hash brown. It became a thing. So one of the guys at church, every Sunday morning, he would make up a batch of like chopped up bacon, sausage, onions in like a hash brown, like you fry it up, right? He made like a whole tray of it, and it's just there in the kitchen. But you have to go into the kitchen to go get some, and everyone who knew, like, we'd go in there, we'd grab some hash browns, like after Bible study before the service, and like the youth would come in, and like everyone is gathering in the kitchen, but someone like got wind of this, and it came up in like staff meeting, and it was like, do guests know that the hash browns are available? and then. So then it became like a thing, and you're like, no, the thing is that the hash browns are like anyone can come, like no one stopped anyone. No one's like, people were even saying, hey, come in here and grab some if you want some. But like the guest had to go and grab some hash browns, and that's how you had to cross that line, and it wasn't served up.
No pre-communion fast for y'all Baptists.
No.
Go ahead, David. Now, Mordecai, Ben, David, you have to show me your face before I'll let you on the screen. So go ahead, David.
I'm thinking of the image that became real popular because of Peterson, of like all the references in the Bible connecting each other, right? Where it's like that graph that always makes the rounds. What if every community is like that, right? Where like the filmmaking of Quentin Tarantino is just him stealing shots from other movies, right? Like he openly says this. He'll say, we have to frame it exactly like this because this is from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, or whatever. Is like any amount of understanding is built within the structure of self-reference. That is what growing deep is. And like, when you're like, I've started a Bible study with a group of people who have never been to church before. And there became a joke. Like my wife introduced something that was kind of a joke the first time we did it, which is at the end of praying, people had never prayed before. And my wife wanted to do this thing from camp where people would hold hands, hold hands crossed like this. And at the end, we would say, thanks for the evening, friends. But you do it like everyone does it all together. Thanks for the evening, friends. Well, right now, we had Bible study a bunch of times on like online. And when we pray at the end, doesn't everyone pray like this on camera? Because it's a reference to something we did in person, as though we're holding hands and we're not. It's like everything becomes self-referential, but that becomes like something very, very deep. It becomes deeper and deeper and like
this is where Luke would say relational ontology.
That's right.
Oh, there's another
That's
Luke.
right.
The baby.
Oh, you bring a baby on, and
I brought the baby back.
I can't function once I see the baby.
Sorry, David, to interrupt, but
No, that's all right. That's all right.
No, I think
This guy was
you're right,
on.
David. I'll have to go back and listen to it, of course, because of the baby. But because once I saw the baby, I couldn't do anything else. But because now it's the grandfather thing, you know. It's like
yeah.
But David, it made me think. We have this really silly prayer we sing before dinner that I grew up singing, and the words are just innate. I mean, it's just thank you, God, for this fine food, over and over, and then right where we are, amen. And it's just intellectually, it's not stimulating at all, but it's something I did growing up, and I couldn't think of something like a better song for us to sing as a prayer before a meal as a family. So now we're singing it as our family. And it made me realize it's not necessarily the content, it's the fact that it's synchronizing our family before a meal. It's the thing that's bringing us together. You know, not that the content of rituals don't matter, but sometimes it's just having that ritual that's shared, that's allowing for communion, you know, and you can get stuck on the form.
I think the essence of storytelling is setup and payoff, right? And so the references, inside jokes, are setup and payoff. It's making a reference to something much deeper. It's a connection with something that's more. It's what we lost by not having a common story, is that we can't have setup and payoff. I can't reference something I can't reference things bigger than myself until I have them. And to watch that with my group of friends who had no Christian connection before my wife and I started this Bible study is incredible, because they are understanding their own lives and things in the news through biblical stories, right? And not in some like crazy conspiratorial fashion, just like in a very basic way, making references to things that like set up, payoff. Like, yeah, that's saying grace before meals is set up, payoff.
Mm-hmm. Loves that wire, huh? Oh, look, Dad, the wire. Let me stick this in your mouth.
Oh, exactly.
You should have a little set of headphones for him.
I know.
The thing is, too, that head, babies have these enormous head. They go bang. So that they invent the headbutt. Do I interrupted someone? You were going to say something, Dale?
I just said, yeah, in the voice of the baby. But that's what wires and mouths are for.
He's like, see, he knows. He knows. All right. Anything else? Or are we about ready to land the plane here?
Well, I will say this, since we do have a baby, I'll take the opportunity to say, just like the baby is dependent on the parents to learn language and everything else, right? Not to touch a hot stove, all that kind of stuff. We are, in a sense, just as vulnerable. And that's why what Jordan Hall was saying about community versus society, and they're not the same thing. And one can undo the other, et cetera, et cetera. And anyways, just wanted to take the opportunity to say the cycle starts again and again and again and again for centuries. So,
amen. That is true. That is true.
The only thing I'd say on the aspect, I have the exact same thing in online communities in the gaming industry. It might be a little bit the same as Paul. It's like the group doesn't want things changed, and they don't want the rite of passage to be made easier for new players to enter. Whereas the designer, you're always thinking, how can I eliminate hurdles of new people coming into the group? And it's an automatic tension between the two, a lot like a church is.
Yeah. And Ron will say the same thing. I mean, it's completely, once church gets to a little happy place, they're like, don't let anybody in and mess this thing up. And it's like, Can't do that.
Yeah.
Happens every time. So, all right. Well, thank you all who joined the stream. And I got a note from Mordecai Ben David. We got a last minute Skankenstein who hey, he's got the balloon hat on.
Clocking in from work, and I have to particularly say hi to my ostrich brothers here.
All right.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There it is.
Did you make a balloon
Put camera
ostrich?
here. This is. I don't know how to work this thing at all. But
it's an ostrich.
It is. This is the first balloon that I taught myself how to make, or that I designed, that I produced myself, because of Joe. Because of how much that patented affected.
Wow.
I love it.
Wow.
But, also, our Job guy. If you're a Job fan, have you read Moby Dick?
I haven't read Moby Dick.
You should read Moby Dick. Robert
All
Alter,
right.
the great Hebrew Bible translator for the Hebrew Bible, calls it the most sustained meditation on God's speeches and Job literature. It's with that in mind, the book is incredible. I will talk about it with you all day long, and so will Caleb.
I like Old Man in the Sea. Old Man in the Sea, I feel, does that.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's all I have to say.
There we have it.
Thanks,
Kale
Matt.
says yes, yes, yes. We're still waiting for Kale to take his class. I do rough draft for Sunday. Kale should take his Great Books classroom skills and figure out how to make series on YouTube for helping us access great books like Moby Dick. So,
An Old Man in the Sea.
Old man. There it is. There is the balloon man's beautiful hat. Oh, I know exactly where you are. I was just up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me, and I'm going to play a little bit of branding.
Happy birthday, Nate.
Happy birthday, Nate.
Yeah, happy
Enjoy
birthday.
those fish and chips.
Happy birthday, Nate.
Bye,
I
everyone.
don't know what branding should I play. Should I play I should play the commercial for the Estuary. So we'll start with an ad.
Midwestuary 2025, August 22nd through the 24th in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss, with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderclay, Rod Dreer, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.
In other news, Ron Copperman was arrested last night after attempting to reveal secret sacred truths of the TLC to an unknown sociologist.
Hold on a second. It's the cops.
Oh no!
Ron Copperman, minister. I set the alarm off. Oh my God, dude. Ron Copperman. Yeah.
18A. TLC authorities have indicated that the Copper Man is being held at an undisclosed facility until he repents of his false prophecy. Back to you, Tim.
Also in today's community report, Clara, our resident sociologist, had some relevant things to say to the world.
So this is my kitchen. You can even see that there is a fly trap behind me. That's something I would have removed if I had really thought about this, because that is disgusting. Right now I am roasting chicken to eat later today. And I feel like I need to justify that to myself and to the world, like literally to the world, because I'm live streaming.
Still I have it. There are moments I conveniently forget that I'm a 40-year-old man. The last vestiges of a ghost long dead. A ghost with a messiah complex. A messiah too lazy to rise or ascend. Happily hurt and hard. A hanger-on or haunting of a time past, a heroic dream of the harrowing of hell, failure to launch, cling to a life vest, treading in spells that linger and last. Mom and Dad, righteous and mad, daydreamers with ghosts of their own. My memory of them stoic, looking with aims to pretend, always on the brink of somewhere, each a child dancing on the fence. On down the river, dreamt in the sunshine, Saturday morning cartoons, the only Sabbath I knew. A disciple of Jim Henson and John Hughes. Worship in cathedrals where the Toys R Us, baptized in ball pits, a clown served the sacrament we eat. More Pepsi and Pizza Hut. Say please, say cheese. Between Kurt Cobain, a scrambled cable screen, towers tumbling, Super Bowls, and reality TV, the ghost is constitutionally unwilling and intrinsically unable to see and be seen, searching madly for attention to seek. But you could be anything. Never say never. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing, ever. Don't talk to strangers. See what I say. Just do it. You don't listen very well, do you? You don't do very well, do you? You're not looking too good, are you? Keep up. Appearances aren't what they seem. Will you ever grow up? You look like you're stuck. I think you took too much. Echoes the ghost within the host, who prays the dead bury their dead and stay buried in a fading dream.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? There.
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
Yeah, walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
Walk, Jesus. Walk with me.
Walk with me. Yeah, hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord. And hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus' journey. I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing? Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me. I'm on my I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king. And David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.